Hello, you wonderful people of the internet. I am Justin. I am here again with the latest entry in my P.T.A. Ander-Thon, in which I look at the films and short films of Paul Thomas Anderson in his career in anticipation of Inherent Vice. So, today I'm going to talk about the short films that he did in between sort of the period of 2002 to 2006, sort of the period between Punch Drunk Love and There'll Be Blood. And really, these represent they're somewhat related. Three of them, or I may get into a fifth film as well, actually. The three of these movies are sort of somewhat related to Punch Drunk Love. There's another one that's kind of its own thing. The first one I want to talk about is a film called Couch. This is a 2-minute film he did with Adam Sandler, and basically this was sort of a silent film in some ways. There's some sound, but it's mostly just Adam Sandler kind of mugging for most of it, and it's really about him trying to find a good couch. And he tries one, he ends up sinking into it. That's no good. So then he tries another one, and it ends up basically bending his legs backwards, so that he basically turns into like a pair of human scissors. And that's kind of how it ends, with him just screaming, "No!" Yeah, it's as goofy as it sounds. But it's interesting in that I think Anderson was trying out this kind of more relaxed comedic tone. It reminded me a little bit of like a Chaplin sketch. I'm not equating it to the best of Charlie Chaplin by any means, but it is very much like he wanted to see, I think, what Adam Sandler could just do with his body language. And I really think there's a lot of like tension and suspense in the scene, especially when you see him like trying out the couch, making sure everything's perfect. And then when one thing goes wrong with the one couch, when he tries out the other one, there's a little more suspense. Like, okay, what's going to go wrong with this couch? And that's all without any dialogue at all. And I think P.T. Anderson is fantastic with dialogue. So to really commit to this silent film format, even though it's only for 2 minutes, I think it's still really good. And I think we saw a lot of that influence in Punch Drunk Love as well, especially early on. So it is, I think, more of an experiment. I think a lot of these films, for the most part, are more like experiments, but they're still interesting. So that's Couch. The other one I want to talk about, which is probably more closely related to Punch Drunk Love, is it's actually a parody like commercial. I think it's only like, I think it's under a minute, and this involves Philip Seymour Hoffman's character from Punch Drunk Love, whose name is Dean Trumbull, who is this mattress king and runs kind of a shadier business under the radar. And it's actually a parody of an actual commercial with a guy who basically jumps off a roof onto 4 mattresses that are on a truck, ends up bouncing off of them and onto the street. So it's more of a recreation than anything else. I think if anything, it just kind of shows Anderson just has this real fascination, I think, with really ambitious failures. And we've seen that especially in Boogie Nights. And even I'd say with Punch Drunk Love, in terms of the Adam Sandler character, who basically crafts this cockamamie scheme so that he can get all these freaking flyer miles by buying as much pudding as he can in a way to kind of subvert the rules of the promotion. So it really is, I think, and he doesn't necessarily fail in that regard, but I think it's just the fact. I think he was just fascinated with the idea of this guy who's literally jumping off a building in order to sell mattresses, and I think he just wanted to recreate that, maybe as a joke, but again, I think it does show kind of his interest as a filmmaker, and I think it echoes some of the characters that we've seen. So yeah, those are very short. This next one is probably the longest one he made in this span between 2002 and 2007, because that's when There'll Be Blood came out. And that is a film called Blossoms and Blood. This was done, it was really a DVD extra for Punch Drunk Love, and it was basically a B-roll. It was basically alternate takes, deleted scenes, stuff like that. And they basically asked him to do, just like compile these alternate takes and deleted scenes, and it was going to be like a special feature on the DVD. Well, he kind of ended up editing it in such a way that it kind of has its own. It's like a mood piece almost. It doesn't really tell a story necessarily, especially if you're not familiar with Punch Drunk Love. In fact, I would recommend watching it only after you've seen Punch Drunk Love. But it really does. What I liked is that it made me reflect on what I loved about that movie, the way it portrays the Barry Egan character and just how earnest and how anxious he is. And I love we get these, we get a lot of those more visual interludes, which are like these abstract paintings. And I think, and there's one great scene that I'll highlight where we see the form of Barry Egan in his trademark blue suit and Lena in her red, and we see the two of them together, but they're not quite distinct. They're very, they're kind of, oh, what's the word? They're not, like, we know who they are based on what we've seen, but it's not extremely clear. They're more like shapes than people, and I think that's, again, reflective of the themes in Punch Drunk Love in terms of, just the way that love turns us into these emotions and into these abstract feelings, and so that's kind of interesting, and I think it's like I said, I think it's definitely it definitely illuminates a lot about Punch Drunk Love. So I like it a lot for that. It's kind of just 12 minutes long. It's really kind of, it doesn't have, I don't know if it has like a really coherent structure necessarily, but it's still pretty interesting. There's kind of like a weird dream logic to it. So that's Blossoms and Blood. And I guess there's another one I want to get into, which is a very short one that I mentioned earlier. And that's called, the name of it is Ball Chewer. It's 30 seconds long, and it basically just involves Luis Guzman's character from Punch Drunk Love and a bulldog, and then it's revealed that they're playing chess together. And basically, Luis Guzman's character puts the dog in a checkmate, and the dog proceeds to turn around and presumably do his business on the board. So that's that one. I don't have a whole lot to say about that one. I just kind of want to highlight it as a curiosity. I really do think he was just like, Anderson was just kind of looking to experiment a little bit with these shorts. That may have even been a scene from Punch Drunk Love. I'm not sure quite how that would tie in, because it doesn't involve the Barry Egan character at all. So yeah, that's that one. And the last one I want to talk about is a little short that Anderson did for a very short-lived show on Comedy Central that was called The Showbiz Show with David Spade. And this was kind of like a little sketch thing, kind of in the mode of Fanatic, where Anderson made this little sketch. It's called Demo Jail. It's from 2006 and involves David Spade, who basically is accosted by one of the interns on the show into listening to his demo tape. And the demo tape is really like, the first sounds like really like generic, kind of stupid, like hard rock, and you can tell David Spade's just not having a good time of it. And eventually, like, he keeps going track by track, and what will happen is you'll have that one really idiotic track in the beginning, and then he'll like go to another one, and David Spade will be like, oh, this one sounds really different. Like, it'll be like an acoustic kind of piece, and then all of a sudden it'll just segue into the original track. And I think it's reflective of, like, when people want to show you their work. Again, I think it does reflect some of the themes we've seen in Anderson's work. I think particularly of Buck, the Don Cheadle character from Boogie Nights, trying to convince the bank that he's a legitimate actor and that they should back him for, opening up his own store. And I see that here with this character who's with the devil. He's like, no, look, I got this great stuff. Like, it's really great. I can explain to you how it's great. And it's just like, getting no positive feedback at all, getting no kind of appeasement. So it's just it's more amusing than anything. I do like some of the convoluted ways that Dave Spade tried to escape. Like he tries to use like a window cutter, and the guy who the intern is just like he doesn't react like, oh, you just broke my window. He reacts like, no, 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 you got to listen to this. You got to listen to this. So it's really, again, I think it's reflective of a lot of the themes that Anderson has worked with, which I really like about him in terms of these shorts. You know, obviously I prefer his features, I'd say, on the whole, but I still think it's interesting that he has such a sense of humor about himself, and he doesn't, I think it shows he doesn't take himself too seriously, even though his films can be very ambitious. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts. A little bit of overview on those short films. I want to do a little something with them, and basically, there's probably gonna be three more things that I look at, and that's the two feature films. The one he did, There'll Be Blood. That'll be the next one. Then I'll probably do The Master, and maybe there was a kind of like set of alternate takes he did for The Master called Back Beyond. So I might get into that. So yeah, those are my thoughts on those short films, and yeah, next time will be There'll Be Blood, which I'm really looking forward to seeing. It'll be my third time seeing it, and that should be a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you for watching, and take care.